I just here yesterday? This is like the third video I've filmed in 5 days, and this is not my normal schedule. I was just here yesterday. Okay, this video isn't gonna go up for a few days. I'm recording this on Saturday, should be up on Wednesday, and when it goes up, I should be getting ready to go to Barnes & Noble. So I'm very excited about that. But, that's not what we're here to talk about today. Hi. If you're new here, hi, I am Song W. Erickson. This is my channel where I talk about whatever's on my mind. And fun side note, look, I did something different with my hair. I didn't just put it up in a hair stick. I'm so happy. I've been wanting to do something different, and I just put it up in a banana clip. Okay, so I told myself I wasn't going to talk about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey for two reasons. One, because I haven't read The Odyssey since middle school, and even then I'm pretty sure the version we read was abridged. And two, I have no interest in seeing Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. Everything about this movie, everything I hear about it, just kills any possible interest I would have. And normally I'm someone who, especially when a movie is controversial like this, I try to see it myself to form my own opinions. I watched the live-action Snow White in a desperate hope that that movie might actually surprise me and might actually be good. I try to form my own opinion on things, but everything I see about that movie and everything I have seen about that movie from the moment things were announced has told me I have no interest in this movie. I have no interest in yet another gray, drab Hollywood depression simulator that makes history look awful and strips away all the color and can't even bother trying to be even vaguely historically accurate. Should I talk about the cost? Look, I knew from the moment we had that first picture of Matthew Damon that historical accuracy be damned, apparently. Like, we know what ships looked like in the Bronze Age. We know what armor looked like in the Bronze Age. We know what art and all these things looked like in the Bronze Age. And this movie did not try to capture any of that. Any of it. Why would I watch this? I don't care. And that was even before the movie actually came out and we started hearing Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey isn't very accurate. Okay? But I love Epic the Musical. If you don't know, what are you doing? Epic the Musical is a concept musical that was written by Jorge Rivera Herrens. I hope I pronounced that right. It's called Epic the Musical. It's so good. It has a full cast, and it's a full range of songs covering from the end of the Trojan War until Odysseus makes it back home. And it is so good. Now, I have seen people being extremely critical of it, especially as it's come up in discussion opposite Nolan's Odyssey. And you know what? I am well aware that Epic the Musical is not accurate. I am very aware that it plays with some of the same themes that people are critical of Nolan using, namely Odysseus being regretful of the Trojan War and everything like that. It plays with some of the same things. It's equally inaccurate. I mean, Odysseus uses Aeolus's windbag as a jetpack to fight Poseidon, using the spirits of his dead crew members. But I love this thing. It's very video game and anime inspired. But I love this thing. And I'm sitting here going, okay, what's the difference? What is the difference for me between these two things? Well, one, Epic the Musical is something that is much more tailored to my tastes. It's entertaining, it's bright, it's fun. It's something that feels artistic and passionate, and it feels like there's a lot of love put into it. And also, I just imagine it being very colorful. There is supposed to be an animated movie that's in production, or at least in development right now, and I certainly hope and imagine that movie will be very colorful, which Nolan's isn't. I should also mention, Epic the Musical keeps the gods, which for me is a big appeal of the Odyssey, because I really enjoy stories where the gods are involved in things and they're actively playing a role. The Odyssey, debatably, sorry, I'm making a lot of noise. Whereas debatably, Nolan's Odyssey completely cuts the gods, apparently. Even Athena's presence is probably just a hallucination of Odysseus's guilt. Where's the fun in that? And so I'm like, okay, what's the difference between these two things? And I think the big thing it comes down to for me is Epic the Musical is not called the Odyssey the Musical, or the Odyssey Musical, whatever. Because it has a different name, and it's more kind of inspired by than a direct adaptation, I'm more willing to give it grace. Whereas you have the Odyssey, it's called the Odyssey. I expect it to be the Odyssey. I expect it to have the same themes and elements as the Odyssey. And of course, from an epic poem to a movie, things are gonna get cut. Things have to change a little. But I do think there is a huge difference between making changes for something to fit a different medium or to fit a time limit, as opposed to changing the themes and the underlying story itself, especially when you're going to try and keep the name of the thing. Now, one of the most frustrating things about Nolan's Odyssey is that it feels like we can't discuss it on its own merits. It feels like it's become yet another culture war thing. It just feels like a lot of the arguments that are happening aren't based around just source material to adaptation. It feels a lot more like it is cultural war sides, and I hate that. I'm so tired of that. And maybe some of my opinion here is based on the fact that I am an author, and so, you know, of course I imagine like having my stories adapted, and I think about, you know, what that could look like, and especially like how to protect my story in that situation. Like how do I make sure that anyone who adapts my story doesn't ruin it? Because it, you know, there's this whole thing of like, well, the book is always better than the movie and adaptations are always lesser. And that's not true. There are book to movie adaptations where I absolutely believe that the movie is better than the book. I'm going to talk about How to Train Your Dragon here in a little bit. Inevitably. Adaptations can be done in a way that the adaptation is better, but so often we see adaptations where you're left going, why is this? Adaptations where the people making the adaptation clearly don't really care about the source material if they're going to go and make all these changes, or they're going to cut things. And maybe it's because I'm a purist. Maybe it's whatever my flavor of neurodivergence is, that I'm like, why would you adapt something and then not adapt it? Why would you do that? And one of the things that infuriates me is something I've seen a lot in the last few years is people arguing, well, adaptations aren't for the fans of the original work, they're for a new audience. And I'm left going, then why did you adapt something that was popular? Why did you adapt something that already had an established fan base? The whole reason, you cannot tell me that every single adaptation we see of a book is made because the producers read the book and said, oh, this is really good. I want to bring this to screen. I want to adapt this in the medium that I work in. You cannot tell me all adaptations are because of that. A lot of these adaptations happen because these books get popular, because they build up a significant fan base, and so producers and studios are going, oh, we can make money off of this. But then you can't be bothered to respect the source material that people like to make a movie that would actually make the fans happy. I'm so confused by this. I'm just... But going back to this thing about if it's a different title, I will give it more leeway. And again, I'm biased because Epic, the musical, appeals to my tastes a lot more than Nolan's Odyssey does. However, I have another example of this, and it's a situation where I love the original and I love the adaptation. And that is Clueless from the 90s, starring Alicia Silverstone. And they've just announced that we're getting a Legacy sequel, and okay. Aren't we done with this yet? Can't this trend be over yet? Okay, whatever. But Clueless from the 90s is an adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma, which is one of my favorite Jane Austen books. I think it's my second or third favorite. I think it's my second favorite after Persuasion. Emma is, of course, it's Jane Austen. It is a Regency satirical story about life in the English countryside among middle-class and wealthy individuals, right? Whereas Clueless is about a 16-year-old rich girl in the 90s living in LA, I think. Hollywood Hills, whatever. Point is, these are two very similar, but at the same time very different stories. If you tried to sell me Clueless under the name Emma, if the main character Cher was named Emma, if the movie was called Emma, I think I would be furious and I would hate it. But because it has a different name and it's called Clueless, I don't mind. I can enjoy it as a different story that is just inspired by Emma rather than needing to see it as an adaptation. And I think there is a big difference, and that's why, like I say, I give it more liberty if it has a different name. Whereas if you are adapting something and you want to use the name recognition of it, I expect you to have some loyalty to the source material, right? The Odyssey, again, from what I understand, is a story that is very much steeped in the worldview of the late Bronze Age and the ancient Greeks at the time, right? It's Odysseus is viewed as clever because he's a liar, and Odysseus is allowed to massacre a bunch of men in his house because of the social norms of Greek society. Epic the musical got around that by making the suitors awful, and people have criticized that, like, oh, why did they make the suitors so despicable? I think he had to find a way to make Odysseus's massacre of these people worthwhile, or not even worthwhile, kind of socially acceptable for modern audiences. Whereas I don't think you should have to make those changes if you're doing a direct adaptation of the Odyssey. But especially if you want to then bring in your own themes and your own thoughts on it, why are you doing an adaptation? Just create a different story. Maybe this is an unpopular opinion. I don't know. But again, this is my opinions and my thoughts on it. Now, I will say, I mentioned How to Train Your Dragon earlier, and I have seen the How to Train Your Dragon movies and most of the TV shows, and except the god-awful Hulu one. We're not talking about that. I have not touched that. That doesn't exist. I've also read the books, and the books and the movies are almost nothing alike. Now, if you were to ask me, which do you prefer, I would say first book to first movie, I'll take the first movie. But if we're going trilogy against the book series, I'm gonna pick the book series. The movies, for the the most part, stick to similar themes. It's still a coming-of-age story. It's still a story of a boy and his dragon. And I don't like the idea of someone taking a story that is not theirs and rewriting it to include their own themes and their own worldview and change it to be what they want while still using that name. And again, maybe it's because I tend to be a bit of a purist. Maybe it's because I am a creator and I'm very protective of my own work. But I see that and I'm like, I just find that so disrespectful. And I get so frustrated that people justify it. And of course, the Odyssey is an interesting case because it's like, if you're gonna say, well, we should respect Homer's vision, of course you're gonna get a whole bunch of people who are like, well, Homer didn't really exist or might not. So like the Odyssey is such an extreme example. At the same time, I think the Odyssey is so important to Greek culture. And we've, especially in the West, where like there's this idea of like, oh, the US is supposed to be like the new Greece with democracy and everything, and no, we're a lot more like the new Romans than the new Athenians. This idea that, oh, it's important to the West. No, it is specifically a Greek text. And I, especially for something that is so interwoven into their culture and that is a part of their heritage, I think especially there should be a respect for that. Am I making any sense? Like, I realize I may be rambling and all over the place, because it's like, I feel like there's a lot to it, if that makes sense. There's a lot of different elements, but at the end of the day, I'm very finicky about adaptations. And I also think part of why, going back to How to Train Your Dragon for a second, part of why I'm okay with them using the same name but having such different stories is it's like, it's still, the How to Train Your Dragon movies still feel faithful to the spirit of the book. And everything I see about Nolan's Odyssey does not feel faithful to the spirit of the Odyssey as I understand it. And like, look, the reason I haven't read the Odyssey, I have the Emily Wilson translations of the Iliad and the Odyssey sitting on my bookshelf. I've had a translation of the Aeneid sitting there almost as long as well. And my interest in those was sparked specifically from Epic the Musical. And like, I want to read the source material. Part of why I haven't is because I'm worried I'm not smart enough to understand it. Like, I'm not very good with poetry, so I worry that I'm going to try to read it, and it's gonna go over my head, and I'm worried I'm going to have to deal with the ramifications of that and having my entire perception of myself and my feelings of self-worth undermined by whether or not I can comprehend what I'm reading when I read the Odyssey. Anyway, look, maybe the point I come down to is that I feel like we are living in an age where creators and their work are inherently disrespected, especially artists and writers. It's not just because of AI, but AI certainly hasn't helped. The idea that, like, if you post something online, a lot of people seem to believe that you give up your copyright and suddenly it's free use. And, well, you can't complain about how people interpret or what they do with your work because you put it out. I write fan fiction. To an extent, I agree with that. But I do think there is a lack of respect towards creators and their works. The way people feel entitled to say that their thoughts and opinions about a work are just as valid as what the author says. I'm not a big fan of Death of the Author, especially after everything that went down with the amazing digital circus in the last few months, with people saying that Gooseworks' ending to her story was wrong because it wasn't the ending that they want, and saying that she didn't understand her own characters and her own story because she didn't make a character that some viewers liked the main character. And that doesn't sit well with me. And I don't like that. And maybe that's part of where my feelings on a lot of this come from. It's like, I've always been weird about adaptations. I'm always the person who's like, but the book did this, but the book did that, or this is what the original was. Again, maybe that's my flavor of neurodivergence. I have no idea what my neurodivergence is. I'm pretty sure there is something in my head that is divergent. Or point is that that's just how I've always been. I am aware a lot of people find it obnoxious. It is just how my head works. And because of that, it just doesn't sit right with me. When people think that they get a say in a creator's works. And that includes adaptations, when someone thinks they can come in and twist someone else's story into their worldview to say what they want it to say and have the themes that they think are important, whether it aligns with the original themes of the work or not. That's just where I fall on things. And again, all of this is my opinion, and all of these are just my thoughts and how I'm looking at this situation and stuff like that. And this is my channel where I talk about whatever's on my mind. And again, I wasn't gonna talk about the Odyssey because, again, I have no intention of watching Nolan's Odyssey, but at the same time, this was on my mind and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So here we are. I think that's everything I'm gonna say about this for now. And so I think I'm gonna go listen to Epic the Musical while I get ready for work. I also need to eat something before I go. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you so much for listening to what I have to say. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I would be very interested to hear it. If you liked this video at all, please give it a like, check out some of my others, and if you like those too, maybe even subscribe to the channel. I do weekly videos, sometimes bonus videos, talking about, like I said, whatever's on my mind. Recently that has been the Tangled leaks from the live action set over in Spain, but I also have talked about Milo Winter and a lot of other things, because again, whatever's on my mind. So I will wrap this up here. Thank you again so much for watching, and until next time, stay safe, take care, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye!